Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-Commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the E-Commerce Edge podcast with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. It's my pleasure to welcome our next incredible guest, Mr. Matthew Stafford from Build, Grow, and Scale. Welcome to the podcast, Matthew.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure, and thank you so much for joining me on this amazing 4th of July, carving out some time for me today. I know most people are taking the day off, probably 4 or 5 beers deep by now. You're based in Deerfield Beach, Florida, yeah?
Yes. Yep.
And have you always been based in Florida?
I actually moved to Florida from California about 2.5 years ago. And before that, I was in North Carolina for a couple of years, and I'm originally from Michigan. So I moved around quite a bit the last 10 years.
Literally from coast to coast again.
Yeah.
Been from East Coast to West Coast and back and traversed the whole country. I think it sounds like you got out of California at just the right time.
I did.
Look, I was, as I said off air, born and raised in California, moved to New Zealand in my early 20s, lived there for almost 30 years, and now live in Mexico. So I don't regret my decision to leave California for a second. Look, beautiful place to visit.
Great weather. Great weather.
Yeah, great weather.
Right
Still
now
have lots
it's
of
just
friends there.
poorly managed. Yeah.
But to live, nah. I'd rather go and visit and do all the touristy things like a tourist and then go back home again. So that's how I treat California now, not as a place to live. But Florida, very nice. My wife and I absolutely love Florida. She's a Kiwi from New Zealand. And one of our favorite places in the world and in the United States, in fact, is Miami. We were just there actually visiting a friend on our way back from Europe, and we stayed with him. He lives in Brickell in Miami, and it's quite a nice part of Miami, and it's got lots of large apartment buildings and blocks, and the views of the sea it's just stunning.
It's about 40 minutes from me.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow. Okay, so
minutes.
not far away from where you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, Florida's a great place, and obviously taxes are very reasonable there, and definitely during COVID, very free place to be, like Texas. Yeah, Florida's got a lot of good things going for it. I don't know that I could handle. I don't know that if we lived there, I could handle the humidity for that 6 months of the year where it's just super humid.
Yeah, maybe I've adjusted. I think that it's about 3 to 4 months where it's pretty brutal. But yeah, I imagine I'm on my third year here, so I'm probably adjusting to where the outside 2 months aren't as bad.
Yeah, totally. We're pretty lucky here. Our weather here, it's because you're from Southern Cal or you spent a lot of time in SoCal, you'll understand this, or you'll be able to make the comparison. The weather here in Puebla, because we sit at 4,000 meters of elevation, so we're very high altitude here, and so our weather is very similar to San Diego. So it's very temperate. Yeah, it's very temperate year round. Never gets too hot. Never gets too cold. Never gets a lot of rain. Isn't too dry. We had an unseasonal. The last 2 weeks have been very unseasonal in the sense that we got a lot of rain. So what were brown hills are now fully green again, and so we get a mix. It ranges from about 15°C to 35°C year round, going from maybe 60 Fahrenheit on the bottom end up to 90 at the top end.
Yeah,
and
that's hot.
with no humidity. So we love the weather here. It was one of the major drivers of us moving here is the great weather versus New Zealand, which is a very cold, wet country, of course.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm looking forward to having this chat with you today about all things e-commerce growth. You do run Build, Grow, Scale. But before we get into that, as one of our guest mentors, we have lots of Monday mentorship episodes where I get in guest mentors to talk about topics that I'm not an expert on, especially with my deep specialization over the last 5 years in B2B e-commerce. And so we'll be talking about what you do. But before we get into that, how did you get into this wonderful world of e-commerce to begin with?
Yeah, so it's a funny story. I actually have been self-employed since I was 18 years old. I bought the business of the gentleman that I was working for and then grew that into a construction business where we were doing commercial concrete. And so we were doing flat work for Menards, Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, etc., the big box companies, and traveling all over the country. At the point that I discovered e-commerce, we were on the road about 200 days a year.
Whoa, that's intense.
Yeah, I went to a Tony Robbins event, and he was selling a program called Money Masters. And it was a monthly DVD and a booklet, and it was highlighting different people that were making money online. The first one was Frank Kern, uh, selling an ebook on how to teach your parrot how to talk. I think the second one was it was either Brendan Bouchard or Russell Brunson. And then I got hooked, and I'm like, man, I've never used my computer to do anything other than look at blueprints and send proposals and things like that. Never thought about like actually selling stuff online, because this is about maybe 17, 18 years ago. And I set a goal in my mind that I would sell my concrete business, and I had two brick and mortar salons. And I set a 5-year goal of that I'd like to be online and be able to work from anywhere and not have to worry about the weather and travel and all that 200 days a year. And so that was really my first start into it. And I dabbled around in SEO for about a year, year and a half, and didn't really like it. And then a platform came out called Teespring, and you could essentially, they had a platform, you could come up with a design and then put it on a t-shirt and pick the colors that you wanted to offer it in, and run a campaign, which would be for however many days you set, and then you would run ads to it, and the more you would sell, the cheaper they would fulfill it for you. And so the goal was to pick the right length that people would still be willing to wait for the campaign to end, and I got pretty good at it. Over the next 3.5 years, we sold about $15 million of the t-shirts, and
Wow.
I was hooked on selling online. I'm like, yeah, this is the way, because I had one designer working for me that I paid per design, and the rest was running Facebook ads, and I could do that from the road to figure it out. And eventually I was making more money doing that than I was having 25 employees and a couple $1 million worth of equipment and driving around the country. So I sold it, sold the two salons, and I've been online for about the last 12 years.
Wow, what a story. This is a true success story. And I think it's so interesting that there's still this mindset from some quarters, and I see it on Reddit, I see it on LinkedIn, I see it across many social platforms, even Instagram, that many people out there, when they first get into e-commerce, they still think of it as the field of dreams. They still think of it as, oh, build it and they will come.
Right.
And to a degree, I think that's true. And I'd love your take on this. I think it's easier now than it ever has been to start an e-commerce business. But I think it's more difficult now than it ever has been to run a successful e-commerce business that doesn't bankrupt you, that you don't have to subsidize ad infinitum, especially with sky high and rising CAC costs, with difficulty in differentiation, a million and one drop shippers out there, a million and one scammers out there for that matter, and with the rise of Amazon, other marketplaces, TikTok Shop, etc. So you have to truly be a great business person in order to be successful in e-commerce. And I'm not quite sure where and when the mindset evolved to where people thought, oh, I don't have any business skills, I don't have any e-commerce skills, but I should be able to set up a e-commerce site and be successful overnight. No one thinks that you can go and be a lawyer without training. Nobody thinks you can go and be a doctor without training. Nobody thinks that you can go and become work in construction with no experience, no training, no qualifications. So I'm not quite sure where the idea came from, and it was probably perpetuated by course sellers and people that were selling get rich quick
A
schemes and things
hundred
like
percent,
that.
especially during COVID, when
Yeah,
everybody's at home, and they would sell you, "Hey, work from home, and you can make thousands of dollars." The laptop lifestyle, and just I don't see that anymore. The it requires you to be a specialist, and what you said, a good business owner, in order
yes,
to create. It depends. It depends on what you how you define success. Because you can certainly make a store that's going to make you 5-10 grand a month,
yep,
but it's still going to be a full-time job. And I have
yes,
other people that have learned, they work their store 30 hours a week, and they're 3.5 years in, and they're going to do 60 million this year. So it does require you to be a good business person, make good business decisions, have a good team. The nice thing is, though, what you said, there's so many options and so much with AI available, that a store that used to do $2 million a month and needed a team of 30, 40 people can now do that with a team of 15.
yes,
So,
or five.
yeah, I don't see people laying people off near as much. I see them using AI to empower their employees to be a lot more productive. So the store is leaner and meaner and gets a lot more done.
And what is your ICP today? Because you've been running this current business, BGS, Build, Grow, and Scale. You've been running this for nearly 9 years now.
Yep.
So obviously, this is what you do full time now,
Yep.
full time as you want to do it. Obviously,
Yep.
you've got location freedom and you've got financial freedom, and so obviously you take on clients that you feel are a great fit for what you do. But what does your ICP look like today? Are they a retail aggregator brand? Are they a D2C brand? What sort of scale are they at typically when they would be a good fit for you? Are they doing $5 million a year and want to scale that to $50 million a year? What sort of characteristics make that prototypical perfect client for you that you think you can really add some fuel to their rocket ship?
Yeah, that's a great question because we've definitely dialed it in over the years. We used to have two parts to our business. We had a membership and then we had the agency side. And I split with my partner that I had a little over 3 years ago, and he focused on the membership side, and I focused on the agency side. I really like to problem solve and figure out the ins and outs of a business and make it scale. And so that was a lot of fun. Where the membership focused on the newer people that were making, it was working but not great, and we could help them essentially grow up and become our ideal client for the agency side. And so I would say, man, on average, it's people doing 100, $200,000 a month
So
because
at least doing a couple million bucks a year, so that they have the resources
yeah,
to put into scaling.
yeah, because we add a team to it. And so we have a front end dev, a back end dev, the Google Analytics guy, and then the person that basically manages the project. So they have four people that from our team that take from when someone lands on the website till they give you money. We figure out all that data, analytics, split test, developer work, et cetera, to help them grow their store. And what we found is around that range, they've figured out traffic, they've figured out their product and fulfillment. Most of the time, they've forced success to that point. And when we go through and fix the website, make it clear, educate the consumer the proper way, introduce the right information at the right time, don't confuse them, make things easy to find, et cetera, all kinds of things that we'll talk about probably during the podcast. Then they see that growth where they can go from three sales out of 100 visitors to 5 or 6 sales. And now all of a sudden, they're a lot more profitable. So they can buy several different forms of traffic and their competitors can't. And that just compounds.
Wow. And so do you consider yourself a CRO focused agency? Is that kind of your
Yeah.
focus today?
Yeah.
If we had to put you into a bucket, would it be a conversion rate optimization focused agency or not necessarily about you not don't necessarily have an acquisition focus, you don't necessarily have a retention focus, you've got a conversion rate optimization focus because that's the sort of three different parts of the funnel, right? Is okay, cool, we got to get traffic to the site, we got to acquire customers. We have to, once they land on the site, we got to convert them. And then after we've converted them once, the goal is to continue to convert them over a long period of time into a high like customer lifetime value customer. So
Yeah.
it feels like you're in the fat middle, which is the conversion rate optimization piece
Yeah,
of the
then the
journey.
retention and resubscribe and repeat. So once they land on the site, our goal is to figure out how to turn them into a client and then have them buy again and again. We work through all of that. About the only thing that we don't do is promotional emails. So we'll help
Sure.
set up all the triggered flows and the win back campaigns and things like that and figure out bundles the right way so that, or even upsells and different things. We actually term it revenue optimization because conversion rate it can be a vanity metric. It certainly matters, but I could run a sale on your store and your conversion rate's going to go up.
Sure.
That's not the end goal. The end goal is that you actually create more profitable revenue and through multiple things on the site besides just the conversion rate itself.
Hmm. And what are the top, obviously, if you're dealing with merchants that are already doing a minimum of $2 million a year, I'm guessing that sometimes they come to you at 20 million a year, 50 million a year, 100 million a year. And so they are at different stages of their life cycle. But if you're exclusively focusing on the B2C and D2C world, then there's not too many, especially pure play brands that would be doing over $100 million a year. That's extremely rare.
We have a couple of big ones that are in the $3-4 million range. That's not typical.
Yes.
We've built them, two of them. Yeah, the two that I'm talking about, we built them. They were literally came to a workshop and were just starting. And so they've been really good clients over the years. The more typical is that 100 to 200 grand a month. And then we help them build to the 5, 6, $10 million range.
Wow. Wow, per month. And then that gets them to the over $100 million a year, which is as long as their margins are strong,
It's a
then
big
that put
business.
it's a good, solid, privately owned business that's very profitable for the owners and the shareholders, which is a great place to be. And especially today with 3PLs, today with there's many options to scale a business to that level without having to have it be an all-consuming 24-hour a day business for someone. There are automations that they can bring to the business. There are certain things that they can do to help scale that business that doesn't require them to live in the business all day every day without being able to have it even a breather to work on the business. And I think that's the beauty of AI. We'll get into that a little bit later, but I think that the beauty of AI is allowing a business to scale without having to scale human resources at the same rate the business is scaling. And that's the really exciting thing I think about modern AI technologies and capabilities. I know for me, with my podcast, even a very simple example, but I can do my podcast, I can record my podcast, edit it, and distribute it all myself because of AI technologies that have enabled editing, automatic editing at scale, automatic post-production at scale, and somewhat automated distribution at scale. And so there's still a lot I have to do, but I would have to have a team of people. Without AI, I would pretty much have to have a team of people working on my podcast now that I'm up to 3 episodes a week. So I think this is the thing, right? It gives your really good people, it gives your star players superpowers. And I think that's the most exciting thing.
Yeah, I agree. What I noticed now, because we have the advantage of being on the backside of some very successful businesses. And what I say is a rising tide raises all ships. So one smart business owner will bring us something that he saw and we'll test it for him. And then when it wins, we can carry it across our partner brands. And so it's been very advantageous for them to be a part of it, because now instead of the business just relying on them, it's got 6 or 7 smart owners in this pool of ideas that all have the ability to test with traffic and things on their stores. We get to bring them very good information of what's working right now, not what was working last year or even 6 months ago. And the other thing that I've noticed, how the basically how the landscape has changed, is 10 years ago when we started doing this, the business owner did do everything. They ran their own ads. They knew about their fulfillment. They had the customer service team in house. And what I've noticed now is e-commerce has gotten, it's growing up. I think we're probably in the third or fourth inning of a baseball game and still got a long ways to go, but it's certainly not in that Wild West stage anymore. And so the stores that are very successful, the store owner is not running the traffic. They have
Yes.
a trusted partner that does that, because that's a full-time job. The store owner is not doing the fulfillment, because if they're at scale, they have plenty of other things to worry about. They do have a person that's in charge of customer support, but they can use a service like Gorgeous from what used to take 13 customer service people down to a team of 5. And each area of the business now basically has a lead and or a key vendor that handles that, and the business owner is much more of a people person and orchestrator or a visionary. And that's the businesses that we see doing very well. And the other thing that I would say that's critical is customer support.
Yes.
The businesses that seem to win, and not just win a little bit, but dominate, their customer support is second to none. And I think that's probably been perpetuated by how easy it is to deal with Amazon. If you order something you don't like it, you don't pay it, you send it back, or they'll come get it
Yes.
or whatever. And that's become the norm. The other thing is you need to manage expectations on when they're going to get the product, because Amazon has also captured that. And so I don't think that everybody wants to buy from everything from Amazon. They certainly are the 800-pound gorilla in e-commerce, but people still like to buy from people, and you don't get that experience with Amazon.
Not only that, but I think the other thing is that whereas you could almost always historically count on Amazon being the cheapest player in the market for the products that they carry, that is no longer the case.
No.
And it's because of the high cost of doing business on Amazon. Those costs have to be passed on. And so the reality is
Yeah,
between
and
FBA costs,
the business owners have realized that if they only sell on Amazon, they've cannibalized their business and they don't own any of the data. And so they've
yes,
had to manipulate the numbers in a way that allows them to start capturing data. Otherwise, they don't really own a business. They just have cash flow. And if you do well on Amazon, Amazon will get their own product or go buy, literally buy right out in front of them and then just close them up.
yep, yep. Or what we saw recently, and I don't know if many of your clients had to deal with this, but they had the great 1P purge over the last couple of months where they basically cut off thousands and thousands of 1P sellers that were selling 1P through Amazon and forced them to go to 3P selling. And so it really, for a lot of these businesses, they were left scrambling to fill that revenue hole. I was working with a couple of clients where Amazon revenue was, and this is in the B2B world, like 25% of their revenue was Amazon.
Mm,
And so to try to overnight, and Amazon gave them zero warning, just all of a sudden, one day, their vendor central account was closed.
yeah.
They couldn't log in. They couldn't get information. They were getting no more orders, and they thought it was a problem. They thought there was a fault at Amazon, and their account manager over at Amazon didn't tell them anything. It just, when Amazon decides to make an arbitrary decision like that, they just cut you off. It is that simple.
Yep.
And they do what's in Amazon's best interests, not in your best interest. And people
100%.
would do well to remember that Amazon is a frenemy at best. And if they don't plan for a post Amazon channel era, they're probably going to be in serious and a world of hurt, especially in a world where answer engines now are going to drive a greater and greater percentage of their website traffic instead of regular web search and regular paid and performance marketing efforts. I think that starts to put pressure on these brands to scale their content and their marketing capabilities in ways that they've never had to do before.
Yes,
And I
I
think
agree.
that's really hard for a lot of brands to contemplate, isn't it?
Yeah, and really the velocity of how fast things are changing right now, it is difficult for the business owner to stay in front of it. And so I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing the success that we're seeing right now. Because our business has doubled in the past year almost. And it really is that they need someone who's giving them good advice about what's happening, because they're focused on their business, and when things stop working, a lot of times they're not even aware of why those changes have
Yeah.
happened or what changes have happened that's creating it. And so we really worked very hard to be able to be a voice of reason and to understand what's happening for our partner stores.
And what are the one, two, three things that you consistently see on a recurring repeat basis? Presumably, when a client starts working with you for the first time, you're probably doing a site audit, you're probably doing a content audit, you're probably doing a code audit, but both from a quality of code perspective, but also a functional perspective. You're looking at all the proof points, you're looking at their content, both on-site, off-site, you're probably looking at their social presence. I'm guessing that there's a pretty expansive audit that has to happen. But what are the sort of one, two, three things that you pretty consistently see over and over again that brands just get wrong, that they just overlook, that they just don't see? What are the one, two, three big levers that you're able to pull alongside them that maybe they didn't even know was possible?
Yeah, it still amazes me all the time how many of them don't actually know their data. They basically run their business, even up to that level, at money in, money out, and don't understand that all money is not equal.
Yes.
And so, really looking at uh, most of the time when they start to struggle, they think more is better. They think I need to add more products. I need to do all of these different things. And what we found 90% of the time is removing things gives you the initial extra oomph to create momentum. and then double down on what's working rather than the paradox of choice of now you've added these other products and it's not clear what is your unique value proposition. So for sure the site matters a lot because that's really your conversation with your client before they become a client. And if they're confused or they have unanswered questions or they don't trust you, those three things, they're not going to buy a sale. And that's why online conversions at 2-3% for an average is so much lower than if you were on a sales call. So we
Hmm.
have multiple different ways to try to capture the people that have been on the site and then give them a better experience. The second one I would say is the owner trying to do too much on their own. And so they set up a bunch of systems and processes that aren't sustainable. They keep adding and adding, but they're not removing anything. So it becomes overwhelming for the owner. And a lot of times that's determined by that panic too. So
Hmm.
I would say realistically, the last one would be the owner doing some, and this sounds funny, but some personal development work on themselves because so many of us as business owners have built a business and thought that, oh, when that's successful, I'll feel better. Of I'm going to learn how to feel better. And then the business I build, I'll love. So they end up building something that was for this reason that was external. And when they get there, it doesn't feel the same way. And so they don't have the same amount of passion for it, or they feel lost. If it or not, those two best clients, we've got the biggest gains and the most success that they've ever seen as far as profitability and volume after they started doing some personal work.
Yeah, what's that saying? It's a very famous saying. I don't know who originally said it, but your business will never outgrow you,
Yeah.
meaning that your business can only grow at the pace that you grow at personally. And I have certainly found that in my own business and the businesses that I've worked with, it really comes down to I'm the handbrake. If there's a handbrake on my business, it's me.
Yeah.
And I got to get out of my own way in some instances to allow my business to thrive and to grow. And I see something very similar, and it can be something as simple as, particularly in the B2B e-commerce world, you've got B2B business leaders that are 60, 70, 80, sometimes 90 years old, and they are second and third generation family run businesses now. But the founder, the grandparent, oftentimes of the people who are running the business now, they don't want to let go. They can't let go, and they can't let go of the old ways of thinking, and they can't let go of the old ways of doing business. And oftentimes, until that parent or grandparent actually exits the business and maybe stays on as chairman of the board or something like that, business just cannot get out of its own way, and it can't see a way forward. If the founder of the business can barely run a smartphone, there's probably a problem in the digital world.
Yeah.
They've probably got big issues in their business, and they can't see it. They're too close to it to see that's the problem.
Yeah. I've witnessed over the last 8-10 years dealing with, we've had about 1,000 members to our membership. And then we've probably worked with 200-300 stores where we've partnered with them to do this work. And what you realize is many times they grow very quickly to the number that they unconsciously believe that will make them feel successful or that they're worth. And
Yes.
so I need a business that makes me 10 grand a month. While they like zoom straight to that, and then all of a sudden the business stagnates. So like, nothing I'm doing is working. And you fix that part, and then all of a sudden they can grow to the next level, or they get it to 8 million, and then the next 3 years they're stuck there, and so they just keep making a bigger and bigger team and adding more things. And they were profitable at 8 million here, but 3 years later they're not profitable at 8 million, and they're like, well, what am I doing? But it is 99% of the time it's a unconscious belief that they have that's keeping them stuck. And so I always tell them, the best thing I can do for you is not to believe your story, because your story is what keeps you stuck.
Yes. And sometimes someone else outside of them, quote unquote, expert, can give them air cover to do the things that they already knew they needed to do, and maybe, or someone in their business knew that they needed to do, but they were afraid of sticking their head up above the parapet and getting it shot off. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, I believe when I'm brought in as a consultant, most of the answers are already somewhere in the business. That's the reality. And someone has those answers in the business, and all I'm doing is uncovering those answers and presenting them back to the business in such a way that it gives it the approval to take action. And and I see that over and over again. And I wish it wasn't that way. But then again, I wouldn't have a business if that wasn't the case.
Yeah, that's what a blind spot is. The name of it is the blind spot. They can't see it. And so typically it, like you said, it's not new information. It's just something that they don't see because they're so busy in the details. They haven't been able to zoom out enough to look at it, or they don't have a fresh perspective. So their brain literally just hides it from them because it's the
Yes.
way it's always been.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I think a lot of business owners I think you have to have an element of ego, at least a little bit there, to want to put your hand into the fire of entrepreneurship over and over again, even when it consistently burns you. You've got to have there has to be a certain grit, there has to be a certain element of ego to it, there has to be a certain personal pride attached to what you're doing in the world for it to be successful. So it's a fine line between that and having the entirety of your self-worth tied up in the success or failure of one business. I think that's a there's this real fine line between those two things, and you have to have simultaneously massive confidence as an entrepreneur, but massive humility as an entrepreneur at the same time in equal measure. Because otherwise, I tell you, the market will punch you in the face, and it will give you humility whether you like it or not. If you only have ego and you only have confidence, the market will eventually get the best of you because you will not be able to change, pivot, adapt, and mold yourself and mold your business to market trends and demands. You will not be able to have the humility to make the changes that you need to make in your business if you can't get the ego in check. That's been my experience in my own business.
Same. The people that I see that are the most successful are the ones that are coachable. And it just really requires you to believe that pay for the shortcut. There's other people who have done. I tell many of the people that we work with early on, you don't have a business problem, you have a people problem. And so the reason why I believe that is because I can go find one of your competitors that's doing very well, maybe 4 or 5 times your volume. So it's not a business problem. They have different people. And so a lot of times the people that got them to the level that they're at can't get them to the level that the business owner wants to go to. And they're so loyal to those particular people that they don't know how to coach them to grow. And so the ones that literally do win are the ones that are coachable. And then they learn to show up better for their team. The team performs better, and that's how they grow.
Yeah, and I think again another very famous saying is, "What if I train my people so well? If I train my people and then they leave? What if you don't train your people and they stay?" It's that same kind of mindset, right? And I think in my experience, it all comes back to a scarcity mindset. It all comes back to this idea that there's a fixed pie here, and I'm scrapping for an ever bigger piece of the pie, as opposed to being a person that has this mindset. Actually, I can expand the pie. I can actually create demand where there was none before. And I genuinely believe that in my own business today. I put out my best, I don't hide anything. I put out my best content for free. I put out my best advice for free on social and podcast and everywhere. I hold nothing back. But I know that in most instances, businesses would rather have someone with 25 years of experience come in and guide them and handhold them through the process than trying to fumble their way and figure it out themselves. Because, like you said, it buys them time. It accelerates the process for them. They might be able to figure it out, but it might take them 2 years. Whereas if they work with me, it might take them 3 months. And so it's the value that a business owner and leadership place on their time, because time to market matters. Time to revenue matters. And money loves speed.
Yeah.
That's another saying I absolutely love, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can speed up the cash conversion cycle in your business, that means you will put more money in your back pocket. End of story.
Yeah.
And so if we can pull a couple of levers that speed up that cash conversion cycle in your businesses, speed up the sales cycles, particularly in the B2B world, if your standard sales cycle for a sale is 3 months and you can reduce that to a month or 30 days or 15 days, massive acceleration of the business.
Yeah.
And this is something that a lot of business owners, they sometimes they realize it a bit too late, and their business is already in pain. So therefore, they don't have the resources that they would have had if they would have started on this journey 1, 2, 3 years before, when they had excess cash, retained earnings in the business that could have really rocketed them to the next level. And sometimes they run their business down to the level where it's like they expect you to come in and throw a Hail Mary for them.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen in most
Yeah,
instances.
we don't like
Occasionally it
being the
happens.
magic bullet. We want to go in, and I've done that. So I can speak from the pain of we've had very profitable businesses doing really well with cash flow and not needing to run ads. And then all of a sudden COVID happened and we couldn't do our events anymore. And then we're like, oh, wow, when we were doing really well, we could have learned how to have another traffic source rather than just these events. And we hadn't. And so it's for sure taught me several things. One, being a hard worker and or thinking that you're smart and I'm a hard worker can only get you so far. Systems and processes are going to give you the ability to run a business through organization rather than just hard work.
And it's going to scale without you having to scale the human component of the business at the same rate that you're scaling revenue and profits. And I think that's again going back to the AI thing. I think even pre-AI, it was the businesses that could systematize and create hyper efficient processes around everything that they do. Those are the ones that have historically won because they keep their cogs down. They suppress their cogs, and so therefore they have more margin to play with ultimately at the end of the day. And you don't spend revenue as a business, you spend margin. And that's what I also learned in my very first pure play e-commerce business that I ever owned. What we learned is that falling ASPs will be the death of your business if you're not careful. So falling average selling prices of your goods. So we were in the memory card space almost exclusively in the beginning. And when we started our business, a 32 megabyte memory card, not gig, meg, was $650.
Oh,
Okay. And then eventually it got to a place where a 32 gigabyte memory card was $25 or $30. And so even if you had the same percentage margin, you did not have the same dollar margin.
right.
And you spend dollar margin. And at the end of the day, you might have the same net 30% margin or whatever it is. But if your ASPs fall through the floor and you don't have if you don't have high dollar margin items to replace those items, you are in deep trouble because
Especially with the ad costs booming and just getting higher and higher, you
yeah,
really need to have a way to develop, I would say, warm traffic or warm leads and then nurture them. So many people back when it first got started, you could literally run a business off of the profits that you made on the front end.
totally.
The businesses that we work with now, most of them are not profitable on the front end or they're
Yes.
very, very slim. They
Yeah,
make
break even you're lucky if you break even on the first
Which is
purchase.
great. If you can break even on the first one, you're acquiring a customer for free, and then
Yeah.
it requires good customer service and a good product so that those people
Mhm.
come back and buy again and again. And yeah, those are the things that they're not optional anymore. That is required for you to do business in this environment. It's not a business where you're going to make a huge margin on the front end, and if you are, that's a unicorn.
But not only that, but I think to your point, I think catalog mix matters now more than it ever has. So, for example, if I'm in a department store and I sell bedding, I sell mattresses and bases, and I sell furniture, but then I also sell consumable goods alongside these other things, then you're probably in a pretty good place. But if you only sell mattresses, repeat business in the mattress business is pretty damn low. Maybe every 10 years, maybe if you're lucky. And most likely they're going to be looking for the next deal on the mattress, and they may not come back to you. And or they may have moved countries or cities or states or whatever it might be, and they might not be able to come back to you. And so the reality is, and also the complexity of logistics and fulfillment for your catalog also matters,
Yeah.
because if you have a range of product sizes and weights and volumetric sizes, etc., then the same 3PL may not be able to service all of your products. And that all of a sudden adds drag to the business too, because now I got to work with two different 3PLs. I got to have the
Split
inbound products have to
shipping.
be
Yeah.
farmed out. And so the cost can rapidly accelerate if logistics is painful for your goods. And so I think it's a lot of these little levers that probably you and I have seen throughout our careers that gives us, it feels like x-ray vision at times, right? You go in and the business owner's going, I just can't tell what we're doing wrong. I just can't tell why we seem to be doing similar amounts of revenue, but our profit keeps going down and down. We have no pricing power in our market. We can't raise prices. They feel like they are just backed into a corner in many instances, and their customers are demanding more and more from them, and they have less and less capability to give that. And so therefore they feel like they're taking one step forward and two steps back. But when people like us who have seen hundreds of businesses in our career, and we've seen what levers have to be pulled to be able to make these businesses successful, and some of the hard decisions those businesses have had to make, in some cases, even a radical pivot in the business, especially around the catalog structure and the catalog items that they carry.
Yeah.
It feels to us, and maybe even it feels like magic to them, but it feels more like X-ray vision to us. Like when I go in and I get a sample of a B2B customers of mine, product data, manufacturer, distributor, and I get a sample of their product data and a sample of their customer data, I can 9 times out of 10 within 10 minutes tell you exactly what's wrong with the business.
Yeah.
And it's wild. It's wild how it feels like you've got a sixth sense, but they go, geez, it's like you have a crystal ball. It's weird. Like when you start telling them, do you have challenges with this and this? And they go, yeah, but how did you know that? It's obvious
Yeah.
from this
Yeah, if you think
that,
about it, when you do the same thing after day, your brain literally goes, "Okay, I don't have to think about that anymore. I'm going to put it in the back." And so when they've
yes.
done that in their business for the last 3 years, we always tell them when we start pointing things out to them, they're like, "Wow, I didn't even see that. That's so obvious now." I'm like, yeah, you probably drove to the office or you drove to the grocery store and you don't remember if the light was red or green or if you
Yeah.
passed someone or any of that. So that same thing happens with you when you're in your business for so long. You develop these blind spots that are painfully obvious to someone who comes and looks at it. And that's really what the coach or mentor is doing, is not fixing things. They're just pointing out the things that are their blind spots so that they can make the adjustment and then they see the success.
Another way I've heard it put is we hold up the mirror and we're prepared to tell you when your baby's ugly.
Yeah.
And that's also a superpower, right?
Yeah.
Being able to hold up a mirror to the business and say, "Sorry, mate, your baby's ugly. I know it's lots of blood, sweat, and tears. This decade of blood, sweat, and tears you put into this, but your baby's ugly. No one around you that's employed by you is going to tell you that because they're afraid of putting their job in jeopardy. But I will because that's what you hired me to do,
Yeah,
and that's a
and
that's a hard thing."
the customers are already telling them that because they're not voting with their wallets. I always say, "Hey," they're like, "What do you think?" I said, "Let's test it and let the customer can vote with their wallet. And when they do that, we know we've got it right."
Yeah, that takes me back to something. The reason I started creating content in the first place, even before I had my own business, and even when I was just an employee, Gary Vee said, "You can, if you think you're a thought leader, put your thoughts out into the world and let the market decide. Because you can't call yourself a thought leader unless you put your thoughts out into the world. Only the market gets to decide whether you're a thought leader or not.
Yeah,
You don't."
yeah,
And so I just got sick of hearing him say that. If you think you're a thought leader and you think you have some good information and good content to share, well, put it out there then. Put your balls on the line, so to speak. Put it out there and let the market decide how good it is,
yeah,
because only the market can decide. You can't rely on yourself because there's ego wrapped up in you.
yeah.
So put the quickest way to knock your ego into check is to put something out into the market and let the market tell you how good or bad it is. So it's incredible. Listen, this has been a really interesting conversation. I think we're on the same wavelength in many respects. What's next for you guys as a business yourself? Are you over the next like 6, 12, 18 months? Is there additional services you're looking at offering your customers? Is there areas that you see that you don't work in your customers' businesses, and either they're telling you, "Hey, you do all these 3 things for us, but we'd actually like you to do also these other 3 things for us"? What kind of expansion opportunities exist for you in your business today?
Yeah, I think a lot of the simple things that we take care of right now are going to be replaced by AI. So we're working very hard and trying all the new tools and testing them right now because even people go, yeah, but that tool is going to it's already going to be expired in the next 6 months. And I'm like, yeah, but the final tool that comes out that actually ends up being the one, if we've iterated all along the way, when that one comes out, we're going to be the first one to use it. We're going to be the expert on it quicker, faster, and it's going to be very difficult for other people to catch up. So we're heavily investing in ourselves with using AI as a company. Just from simple point, like even Shopify, the CEO sent out a letter to all their employees and said, you need to find a way to use AI to double your production in the next 12 months or you'll lose your job. And so
Yes.
for us, we believe that if we don't do that, we'll lose our company. And so, how do we make ourselves infinitely more valuable to the store owner so that we can give them the very best advice and help them implement it as fast as possible so that they win compared to their competitors?
I love that. Very much see the same in what I do. And agentic commerce is coming, and it's coming probably faster on the B2C and D2C side than it is on the B2B side, but it's definitely coming on the B2B side because the e-procurement systems are the major e-procurement systems in the world are developing agentic buying capabilities, and the suppliers in the B2B world have to develop agentic selling capabilities. Otherwise, they will not be able to sell to the buying agents.
Yeah.
And it is that simple. So there's big changes. I'm probably more excited, or at least as excited about being in this industry now as I've ever been.
Same.
Like, see the coming of mobile, and I just remember like it was yesterday how massively disruptive mobile was to our entire industry. And we were all trying to figure out how the hell do we build these amazing user experiences in this tiny little footprint and not make it totally useless on these tiny little screens. And then of course the Apple iPhone 3G came out, and that was a giant screen compared to the BlackBerry Pearls and some of the previous devices that came before it. And so we figured it out. We figured it out, right? We figured it out. Isn't it incredible?
Yeah.
Isn't it incredible? And so I think we'll figure out this AI thing too. We'll figure out this agentic commerce thing. I don't know exactly where it's going to land yet. I have some ideas, but I don't know exactly where the standards will land. It seems like MCP is emerging as a little bit of a standard. When the beta versus VHS war happened,
Yeah.
a lot of people predicted beta would win because it was the better quality picture, but VHS won. And I have oftentimes seen inferior technologies win the market, whether it's because they're marketed better, whether it's their position better, the messaging is better, whatever it might be. So the best technology doesn't always win, but
I think the
as
best marketer
long,
wins. Yeah.
yeah,
I really do.
totally,
Difference
totally,
between Blockbuster and Netflix or Kodak and Canon for the digital.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Kodak's actually the one that came up with the digital camera and said, "Oh yeah, but if they use that, then they won't need to get their film developed." And so they basically hid it until Canon came out and stole their market.
Couldn't agree more. Listen, this has been absolutely fascinating. If people want to reach out and get a hold of you, I will drop a link to your LinkedIn profile and to your website in the show notes. But other than that, how do you like people to reach out and have a conversation about all things business growth and conversion rate optimization?
Yeah, my email is matt@buildgrowscale.com. And so you can reach out to me. I read all those, or you can go to our website and see who we specialize in helping. And right on there, you can book a call with me. I'm very accessible. I actually get up every morning excited to do this, and I love what I do. So I'm here and I'm present.
Love it. I couldn't have said it better. I still am as excited. I've been in this game for 25 years, and I still can't imagine doing anything else. And that's pretty fortunate because I don't know many people that have stayed in an industry for multiple decades and still love what they do just as much as they did when they started. So I think we're very fortunate to be in the space that we're in and feel that way about what we get to do every day. And I still consider it a privilege to work with the clients that I work with. I've always felt that way. So listen, it's been fascinating. As we come down to the end of our time together, an hour has absolutely flown by. Now's where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal or professional. So, Mr. Matt Stafford from Build, Grow, Scale, what is your question for me today?
If you could give your 10-year-old self advice, what would it be?
Start investing sooner. That's the advice that I would give. You're going to be, I'd say, first of all, you're going to be just fine. You're going to have a great life, but start investing sooner for the start. I was always a little bit of a long-term thinker, and I think my parents had a role to play in having a longer time horizon view of the world, but I waited to start heavily investing in the markets too late in life. The power of compounding is a superpower. The one thing I did really was I avoided debt for almost the entirety of my life. I have an almost paranoid avoidance of debt. I've had debt only a couple of times in my life where it was made sense, what I felt made sense to do. But the flip side of the coin is the power of time, the compounding power of time. It really makes a difference.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to make up for that on the back half of your life, it's that you just have to work so much harder. You just have to put so much more away of your disposable income to catch up that, yeah, the sooner you can start, the better off you'll be. Now, admittedly, getting into investing when I was young, it was hard. Like you had to work with one of the major investment houses. They usually had a $10,000 minimum. Like the fees that you paid were high. There wasn't online trading like there is today. And so investing was harder, admittedly, when I was young versus what kids have access to today. But I still would have put more emphasis on that younger. If I could go back and do it again, I would bust my ass to invest more sooner in my life.
Yeah, I would second that. And just we spent so much time learning and becoming experts at what we do for a living, but spent so little time learning and becoming an expert on money.
100% could not agree more. And look, I grew up in an entrepreneurial household. My dad owned his own business the entire time I was growing up, so I had that modeled for me, and so I had the earning part and building a business part modeled for me. But because my parents never invested in the markets, I didn't have that modeled for me. So I didn't know what that looked like, and it all felt pretty scary. And you're exactly right. I think we don't learn those skills as youngsters, and we certainly don't learn it in school. So it's a real shame, and I think it's a knowledge gap deficit that it keeps the ultra wealthy, and in many cases it keeps the middle class and the poor exactly where they were, exactly at the strata that they were born into. The people very rarely move out of those stratas that they were born into. So that comes back to that mindset thing you were talking about earlier. Listen, this has been a great chat. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for carving out part of your fourth for me today, and I can't wait to speak to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.